Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought I'd just do a short video today talking about some weird balancing that's in the game right now, and I think it might be down to the fact that certain vehicles got changed recently when it came to their stock effects, and eventually, with the new BR changes that'll come out eventually, we'll probably have some changes of these vehicles, and I want to today focus on the F-104s. The good old starfighters. There's a ton of them in the game. There's some in the American tech tree, some in the German tech tree. There's even one in the Japanese tech tree, the Japanese tech tree, the Chinese tech tree. There's two of them in there. Italy even has a few. They're all over the place when it comes to the game. That's why we have an update which is literally named after them. Good old update starfighters. And a lot of them have very different uses. Sometimes they have different engines, some of them have different weapon loadouts, and some have countermeasures, and some don't. And it's just really odd looking at them all. I've played a few of them so far. So I played the German F-104G, which is broken at its BR. I played the Italian F-104G, which is slightly worse than the German one, even though it's at the same BR, which is also insanely good at its BR. And then I've also played the F-104A, which is the American one, which is worse than the 104C, which is at the same BR. And the difference between the 10.0 F-104s and the 10.3 F-104s is staggering when it comes to their combat capability. And when you compare the 10.3s to the 10.7s, it's even more all over the place. And as I said, I think this is literally just down to the stock performance being so much better in the 10.3 ones than the other ones. If you have a look at the 10.0 F-104s, the A and the C, you get access to the Vulcan cannon, and that's about it when you're stock. When you get to rank 2, you get two AIM-9Bs, which are okay, but not very good, so you're mainly relying on your Vulcan still. The same thing is with the F-104C. They play very similarly. Now, the Vulcan is a fantastic gun. It works incredibly well and shouldn't be looked down upon. But these vehicles, the only thing they have really going for them, apart from the gun, is their speed. And their speed is incredibly good, by the way. Meaning that if you set up properly in a match, it's very hard to die. And you pretty much just go to an outer area, depending on where it is on the map. You wait for the initial engagement, and then you hit hard as you go through the center, smash one or two people, go out the other side, reset, do it again. It's really simple gameplay at the end of the day, and that's how I've basically played all of the F-104s that I've got my hands on and done pretty well with them. The F-104A, for example, for America, I've gone 66 air kills, 20 deaths, 51% win rate, and that is seen as one of the worst F-104s because of the fact it doesn't get countermeasures and you have to rely on its speed. When it comes to other F-104s, which I actually believe their BRs make even less sense, they really should be adjusted. These are the F-104G for the Germans and the F-104G for the Italians. Now, the F-104G for the Italians has access to two AIM-9Js, stock, and also gets countermeasures as a rank 1 modification. This is fantastic. It also has an AIM-9J modification on it, but all that AIM-9J modification does is it means that you can bring along AIM-9Js with other loadouts, which you don't use in aerialistic. And if you're using this thing in ground realistic, you're going to struggle with it. It's not really designed for that role. Well, unless you're German, and then you just crash it a lot. But the F-104G for Italy is fantastic at 10.3. It is an insanely good vehicle, to the point where right now I am 66 air kills in it and 9 deaths. And over 23 battles, 56% win rate. And then when we have a look at the German one, which is just a better version than the Italian one, because it gets access to 4 AIM-9Js instead of just 2 of them, and it also gets the 2 stock AIM-9Js, so it makes the actual research through it easier, and also gets access to the countermeasures at rank 1. This machine is fantastic as well, and over the last day I basically went 120 kills and 10 deaths in it at nearly a 70% win rate over about 50 battles, and that is including a bunch of battles that I did in ground where I was just swanning about for a little bit. So the F-104G is really good for its BR. And it's because it's at 10.3, so it's at the bottom bracket of the 11.3 area. So therefore, if you get into 11.3 game, you get quantitative matchmaking, which is quite good. And usually a lot of the 11.0s get brought up into the 11.3 matchmaking. So your normal matchmaking is either 11.0, 10.0, which you can deal with, or it's actually 10.7, 9.7, or 10.3, 9.3. And the F-104G has speed, it has a really high velocity gun, which is very accurate, and also has access to a few other factors, such as the 4 missiles and the countermeasures to keep it alive. It's a really, really good machine. It also has an RWR as well, so you can deal with, you can deal if you're getting locked on through radars, because a lot of vehicles now have a lot more powerful semi-actives, so you've got to be a bit careful from that. But I've played all of these vehicles the exact same. But when we have a look at other F-104s, this is where it gets a little bit weird. So the F-104J for the F-104J for the Japanese doesn't get access to countermeasures, which are very, very useful when it comes to these F-104s, because speed doesn't always win you, a way to get away, but it does get access to better missiles. It gets AIM-9Ps and AIM-9Es. So AIM-9Ps are fantastic missiles. They're very similar to AIM-9Js. I would actually prefer the Ps after using them on the F1. I thought they were really, really good at annihilating stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people prefer the Js, or maybe there's a toss up between them. But they are fantastic missiles. But the thing doesn't have countermeasures, and also in its stock configuration, it gets 2 AIM-9Bs instead of 2 AIM-9Js. So it's a lot worse in its stock configuration, meaning that its grinding is a lot harder. And then when you have a look at the Chinese one, so once again, you got the F-104A, once again at 10.0, even though it's massively worse than the 10.3 F-104s. And then you have the F-104G, which has access to the AIM-9Js, and which is great, but it doesn't get access to the countermeasures. So this is just worse in every way. Well, not in every way, but it is just worse than the German F-104G, and I would hazard say it's worse than the Italian F-104G. Even though it gets access to 4 AIM-9Js, it doesn't get the countermeasures. And this thing is higher BR than both of them because of some reason. So you can see the issues that we're running into. We have not enough of a gap between the standard F-104Gs at 10.3 and the F-104A and C, which are vastly inferior to it. And then we have the Chinese F-104G, which is higher than both of them, even though it doesn't have countermeasures. And it is exactly the same as the German one, just lacks the countermeasures. So either the German and the Italian one goes up to 10.7, or this one goes down to 10.3. Now, my belief is you should put up the F-104Gs. I understand they have a unique playstyle. I understand it is not going to be the easiest for most people to play because it's slightly different to how you play other jets, but they are insanely good when used properly. Then, on top of that, you have, of course, the Italian F-104s. So once again, we've already talked about the G. You've got the S. The S just has access to AIM-9Js. It also has access to semi-active radar homing missiles. Doesn't get access to the gun, though, but does get access to countermeasures. This one is 10.7. Sorry, it doesn't get access to countermeasures. That is one of the problems of the F-104S. This one is 10.7, but it technically has better armament than the 10.3s. So you can kind of understand why the vehicle is at 10.7, but the lack of countermeasures really hurts it a lot. So in my opinion, this thing should be 10.7, but they should raise the other ones to 10.7 as well to make it a choice between them. And then you've also got the ASA. The ASA is obviously fantastic. It's a really, really good vehicle. So that's that one pretty much has everything. You know, it's being at 11.3 is no surprise. You know, it has the countermeasures, has the really good missiles, has the gun, has everything you would want. So that one is kind of in its fine place. But just looking at the 10.0 F-104s, comparing them to the 10.3 F-104s, and comparing them to the 10.7 F-104s, it's all over the place. I think what needs to happen is the 10.3 F-104s need to go up to 10.7, because the 10.3 ones are just pretty much better than some of the 10.7 ones that exist. They're better than the Japanese one, they're better than the Chinese one, so why don't these vehicles go up in BR? And yes, I understand that there's going to be people who are annoyed at that decision because they really want to do, you know, well in these machines, and speed is one of the key things for the F-104 to be able to make it really good. And as you go higher and higher in BR, that becomes less of a factor. But then that just means your setup has to be slightly better when you're going into battles. A lot of the battles that I play in the F-104G, I feel like I am untouchable. If I ever get in a full down tier, nobody can touch me and everything dies. It's one of those crazy situations, and I really hope in the next BR matchmaking changes, we get some changes to these things. Because the F-104s at 10.3 are nuts right now. They're insanely good. So we'll have to see what goes on. Hopefully we get some changes soon, now that events are over and we're going into more of a quiet time of War Thunder and all of that good stuff. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.